Thanks for being here. More of it leaks out every goddamn day. I get it. I'm not the only one who said this proxy war in Ukraine was bullshit, but we're proven right every single day. Some new part, new factor, the story leaks out. Same as with the goddamn Chinese balloons, same as with the sound cannons in Cuba, same as with the Russian bounties, same as with Russia Gate, same as with Syrian chemical weapons. Every week we find out, oh, looks like they were right. Oh, yeah. Looks like the independent media had it right all along. Happens again and again. And and it's like, dude, and you get no reward for it for being right endlessly. I mean, I'm not saying I've never been wrong, but for being right most of the fucking time, you get nothing. You actually get shadow banned. I'm more banned now. I've been noticing that my Facebook numbers, like, if you're seeing this on Facebook right now, you are the one. You are the guy, like, or the lady. So have fun in that fucking chat room because you are the one that got to see my live stream on Facebook. You're like the only one. Congrats. High five. Welcome to your own private chat box. Glad you made it. But anyway, thank you all for being here. I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into how former Israeli prime minister says that he was stopped from helping create a peace plan, and not just a peace plan, a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. I'm going to get into that. That's been revealed too. Every day, more of it comes out. More of it comes out. Just keep watching. More of it comes out. And it's just like, every day we're showing more. I'm gonna get into that. I'm also gonna get into the NBC News. I'm gonna show you a clip of that and how they're more of their bullshit. News on Venezuela, the kidnapping of a Venezuelan diplomat. There's an update on that. And yeah, all of it. Let's do it. If we have time, we'll get into a little Wall Street Journal bullshit. I don't even know if I can call it propaganda. It's just them being pathetic, rich fucks over at the Wall Street Journal. But anyway, so yeah, let's do all that. Thank you for being here. If you're watching this, and if you're not a troll, then you are an amazing human being, and thank you, thank you. It means a lot. Throw a hello into the comment thread, no matter where you're watching, no matter what platform. It always helps. Also, since we're like 97% good people here, because I'm not being shown to anyone who's not already a fan. So since we're 97% good people here, go ahead and say hello in the chat because I like seeing people get to know each other and hang out, and everybody says hi, and we all like bond. We bond over being right about what the U.S. empire is involved in, and their awful, horrible bullshit they're involved in. So yeah, throw it in there, say hello, and you might find a friend out of it. Sometimes people say hello in their city, and then someone else says hello from the same city, and then you got a friend in that city. That's how easy it is. You got not just you got a friend, because we all have friends that we violently disagree with. You have a friend who gets the shit. You have a friend who knows what's going on. How crazy is that? All right, so this is coming from. And thanks for everybody saying hello. I love it. I see some of you, the ones I can keep up with, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. All right. So this is coming from Consortium News. They do good work. The Consortium News is probably the best journalism from a 1990s style website that I have ever seen. I'm actually, not only am I a fan of Consortium News, but I also used to write for them. So I have written articles for Consortium News, but they angrily defend their 1990s style website. Nothing is going to yank them from that. They want people to know the era when they were started. Anyway, so here it is from Consortium News. Western leaders privately say, and by the way, they've been wrong about nothing as well. So generally, if you read something at Consortium News, you're not going to find that it was incorrect. Western leaders privately say Ukraine can't win the war. Western leaders have privately told Ukrainian president, and this, I'm calling this leaked because this clearly was not meant to get out. I mean, there is some, I'll get into this in a minute, but there is some reason to believe the U.S. actually does want these things to be leaked, to get out. However, they are still leaked, whether intentional or unintentional. This is not like a press release. This is not a get up in front of the mic and say, "Hello, everybody. We wanted to let you know that the Western leaders privately said Ukraine can't win." So this is still leaked. Whether there's some U.S. benefit to this being leaked, I'll talk about that in a minute. Western leaders privately told Ukrainian President Zelensky that Ukraine cannot win the war against Russia and that it should begin peace talks with Moscow this year in exchange for closer ties with NATO. And just real quick, I have on previous live streams, I've talked about how a Rand report, which Rand does these think tank pieces, and I won't explain it all again because many of you watch most of these episodes, so you already get it. But Rand does the type of analysis that the ruling elite actually listen to, because Rand Corp is part of our government. Essentially, it is the ruling elite. So when they say, "Here's what U.S. needs to do," the U.S. more often than not does it, because that is their analysts, that is their people, that is their think tankers. So. I see someone asking if Consortium News is at Rad Indie Media. It is awesome. Often on Rad Indie Media. By the way, for those who don't know, radindiemedia.com, RADINDIE media.com is a place to get your news every morning. It has stuff from all the best sites, and I created it with Eleanor Goldfield, and it is not a moneymaker. So if you're worried that it is a place that is going to try and steal money from you or have ads or whatever, nope, just there to help you find the news. radindiemedia.com, RADINDIE. Okay, so Rand had said in this report, which was leaked, and I legitimately think it was leaked unintentionally, like they didn't want it to get out, that the U.S. should begin socializing the idea that we are pulling out of this proxy war in Ukraine because we've gotten what we wanted, some of it, such as cutting off economic ties between Russia and Europe, and pushing Europe back into a vassal state kind of feudal situation with the United States, feudal spelled both ways. And so we got that. We got huge sanctions on Russia, but they had an unintended kind of boomerang effect. And the things we haven't gotten, such as destroying Russia, regime change in Russia, which Biden slipped up and said we wanted because he's not supposed to say that out loud. The stuff we haven't gotten, we're not going to get. It's not going to happen. So we've gotten some of the things we wanted, meaning the U.S. fucking shithead psychopaths, which I love. I love saying we and throwing me in with them. Yeah, the thing I wanted. No, things those assholes wanted. Many of them they got. Some of them they didn't get. But the ones they didn't get, they're not going to get. So it's done. It's done. The U.S. has done what they sought to do, and what they haven't achieved ain't happening. So Rand said it's time to start socializing. You can't do an about face because it'd be politically a disaster if Biden walked out there and said, hey, everybody, we're no longer supporting Ukraine. Have a good day. If he did that, it'd be a political disaster. So instead, you start drip-drabbing these things out there. Oh, the U.S. can't support them forever, and Ukraine needs to make big gains soon. And you start dripping these things out. And sure enough, the fucking week after I covered that report, that Rand report, here it is. And this is the third or something segment I've done on all the ways that this is exactly coming true. So this is from Wall Street Journal reported private remarks to Zelensky said, which reported on the private remarks to Zelensky. Okay, this is the Wall Street Journal speaking, thought it was one of the Western leaders. The public rhetoric masks deepening private doubts among politicians in the UK, France, and Germany. I love that they pin this on UK, France, and Germany. Not UK, but with France and Germany, the countries that were like pushed into this proxy war, kicking and screaming. They did not, like, Germany was about to get all kinds of cheap fucking gas from Russia, which this world still to this day, even though it shouldn't because of the climate crisis, still runs on fucking gas. So you get cheap gas and you are doing great. Your economy's doing great. Everybody's doing great. You get cheap gas. Awesome. And Germany was forced into this proxy war, cutting off their cheap fuel. And the U.S. is like, don't worry, we have your back. We'll sell it to you at double the cost or whatever the fuck. Anyway, politicians, UK, France, and Germany, there's private doubts among those politicians that Ukraine will be able to expel the Russians from eastern Ukraine and Crimea, which Russia has controlled since 2014, and a belief that the West can only help sustain the war effort for so long, especially if the conflict settles into a stalemate, officials from the three countries say. Quote, we keep repeating that Russia mustn't win, but what does that mean? If the war goes on for long enough with this intensity, Ukraine's losses will become unbearable. Oh, really? Oh, fucking really? They weren't unbearable from day one? Fucking destroying an entire nation, causing millions of refugees, causing tens of thousands of deaths. That was fine. That was fine. But now it's starting to go. Dude, they knew exactly. When I say dude, I mean every person listening. That is 10,000 dudes or 50,000 on a good day. Dudes that I just called dude. Anyway, they knew this going in. They knew all of this. It's not like I'll tell you what they didn't know. They didn't know. They knew the U.S. they knew Russia would invade. They were trying to push Russia to invade. They succeeded in getting Russia to invade. It seems unlikely, although not impossible, unlikely that the U.S. thought Russia would invade all of Ukraine. They thought Russia would take Donbass and some other regions. But, so that's maybe what they didn't know. But everything else about Ukraine can't beat Russia. Yeah, of course. Russia's one of the largest militaries in the world, even though it's fucking 10,000 times smaller than ours because we dump $1 trillion into it every year. But Russia's one of the largest militaries. Russia has way more people. That, of course, you would have to, if you were to believe, if you are sitting at home right now and you're a neoliberal or a liberal or a Republican, and you believe that the U.S. was thinking until just the other day, the U.S. thought that Ukraine was going to beat Russia if we just gave them a few tanks. If we just gave them a few missiles, they could beat Russia. No, the U.S. never thought that. The U.S. wanted this to happen. Again, I'm against the proxy war. I'm against the invasion by Russia. I'm against the 2014 U.S.-backed, Nazi-backed coup. I'm against all of it. But that being said, the U.S. wanted Russia to invade so that they could pour sanctions on them, so they could cut them off from Europe. All of that happened. And the U.S. also knew Ukraine would not beat them. And the U.S. knew that this would end at a peace table at some point because that's the only way it could end. That and nuclear fucking holocaust. But we are led by psychopaths, and they don't care. They don't care that they're pushing us towards nuclear Armageddon. They'd rather have global hegemony than give a shit about that. They'd rather bomb a pipeline that the U.S. has hated since day one because it gave cheap gas to Germany from Russia. They'd rather bomb that pipeline, putting us really the closest to nuclear war and nuclear fallout and nuclear winter and the failure of all our crops on the planet, putting us closer to that than we've been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And they're fine with that because they're psychopaths and they want global hegemony. To go back to this article real quick, the public rhetoric, masks, etc. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz told Zelensky at an Elysee Palace dinner. Oh, I was like, why is it an Elysee? Are there multiple Elysee Palaces? Dinner earlier this month that he must consider peace talks with Moscow. Exactly how I and everyone who is honestly pro-peace, not bullshit pro-peace, not the fucking liberal media garbage pro-peace, not the most Republicans in Congress pro-peace, not the Democrats in Congress pro-peace, not that bullshit kind of pro-peace. The real anti-war people said this from day one. You know how this is going to end? It's going to end at a negotiating table, peace table, and Ukraine's not going to gain anything than they don't already have. And sure enough, they haven't. They fucking haven't. Macron told Zelensky he had been a great war leader, but that it would eventually have to shift to a political statesmanship, and make difficult decisions. Yeah, this is, and the reason this drives me, nuts is that how many people had to die for this? How many people had to die? And how much of that fucking country had to be destroyed? How many refugees had to be created to get to this exact same point that we said from day one? I mean, millions. And here's Blinken, Secretary of State Antony Blinken. This is the socializing, and Rand report. The Rand Corp used the term socializing, but really, what is this? Social engineering. Social engineering has a bad connotation. People don't like how that feels. They're socially engineering us, but that's what it is. Social engineering. So socializing, what they say, is social engineering, and the report said it's time to start social engineering the idea that Ukraine and peace with Russia needs to happen. And here we're seeing it drip, drip, drip every day. We see the U.S., we see the U.S. mainstream media, which is the propaganda outlets for the U.S. government, which is Wall Street Journal, etc., New York Times, Washington Post. We see them saying, hey, it's about time to wrap this thing up. Now they're saying it to Zelensky, Mr. Puppet Zelensky. And, I don't know how well he's getting the message. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. Secretary of State Antony Blinken last month discussed with the Washington Post arming Ukraine post-war, but he did not say that Ukraine should seek peace talks. So he's already talking about post-war, which is Blinken and the administration's way of saying, hey, time to start planning for the post-war, right? It's almost wrap it up. Right now, what it is, so I don't know how many people know this or whether this is inside knowledge, but if you're a performer, specifically a comedian, there's a light in the back of the room that tells you when you have like 2 minutes left. So, let's say you're performing a 20-minute set at 18, the light turns on in the back of the room. And it's time to start wrapping it up. And that's what they're doing with Zelensky right now. The light has come on. They're like, yeah, I know we told you to fight to the last Ukrainian. I know we told you to fucking get in there and die for the cause. But let's wrap this up. That's right. We've destroyed, God knows how many lives, but that's meaningless to us. But really what's important is we've gotten what we wanted, and the stuff we haven't gotten that we wanted, we're not going to get. So wrap it up. So Zelensky's getting a light. Then once you start going over your time, they start blinking the light. Then if you really go over your time, they start walking towards the stage going like this, like that. So I don't know which of those stages Zelensky's at. I don't know if he's at the blinking light now, or they started doing this thing, or I don't know. And then eventually they turn your mic off. And the turning of the mic off, in this analogy, would be the U.S. cutting all funding and military weaponry. That would be them turning the mic off. But anyway, Blinken said, quote, we have to be thinking, and we are, about what the post-war future looks like to ensure that we have security and stability for Ukrainians and security and stability in Europe, Blinken told the conference in Munich. Oh, post-war. You already thinking about post-war? That's funny, because when this thing started and you created this proxy war, I didn't hear a lot of talk about post-war. You just said, time to go to war. Anyway, but I actually have more on Ukraine, so let's keep going on this. So as many of you know, because I covered it and I mentioned it many times, Boris Johnson, well, let me back up. Zelensky was on the cusp of signing a peace deal with Russia in March. So this is within weeks, April of last year. This is within 4 to 6 weeks of when this thing began, of when the invasion began. And do you remember there were peace talks? The mainstream media was actually covering that there were peace talks then, a year ago, plus a month. And then Boris Johnson, the U.S. does not want peace at that point, right? Because the U.S. has not yet done everything that we wanted to do. We wanted to alienate Russia and a lot of the globe. We wanted to create these massive sanctions. Much of this is boomeranged. I mean, the sanctions are fucking harming Americans. The sanctions are destroying Europe. The sanctions are ruining lives across a lot of Europe. So a lot of this is boomerang. But this was the goal. This was their goal. And Boris Johnson was sent as basically a fucking Pinocchio of the U.S. empire. He was sent to go tell Zelensky, cut off peace talks. You're not signing a peace deal. And if you do, the West will pull out all backing for Ukraine. And of course, Zelensky, now he's a clown in many ways, but I don't know. I don't know how much of his heart was in. I don't know where his motivations actually lie, other than being a rich guy with fucking tax havens and millions of dollars and famous and all that shit. Beyond that, I don't know where his motivations lie, whether he gives a shit that Ukrainians are dying every day or I don't know. But so Boris Johnson goes running over there and says, we will pull out all support if you sign a peace deal. So the peace deals all end. They're all cut off. Now, of course, much of that is not covered by the mainstream media. The only thing that was covered by the mainstream media is that there were peace deals that fell through. They don't say the U.S., the West stopped them. But here is a new update on that it wasn't just those peace talks. Former Israeli, and antiwar.com, by the way, also does very good work. Former Israeli Prime Minister Bennett says, and he was Prime Minister last year, says U.S. blocked his attempt at a Russia-Ukraine peace deal. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett said in an interview posted to his YouTube channel on Saturday that the U.S. and its allies blocked his efforts of mediating between Russia and Ukraine to bring an end to the war in the early days. Wow, this kind of lines up with everything I just said, right? The U.S. did not want peace. We want peace now because we've gotten what we wanted, and what we haven't gotten, we're not going to get. But we did not want peace in March of last year. On March 5th, 2022, Bennett traveled to Russia to meet with President Putin. In the interview, he detailed his mediation at the time between Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky, which he said he coordinated with the U.S., France, Germany, and the UK. Bennett said that both sides agreed to major concessions during his mediation effort. For the Russian side, he said they dropped denazification, which, if you've been following, Putin mentions that a fair amount. Denazification as a requirement for a ceasefire. Bennett defined denazification as the removal of Zelensky. Now, I know some of you may be going, how could denazification be the removal of a Jewish president of Ukraine? Well, because Zelensky, despite being Jewish, is all in with the Nazis. I mean, there are photos of him with his personal guards, the people standing around him protecting him, have Nazi, that's not a swastika, but they have other Nazi-related emblems, like on their fucking jackets and backpacks. He is all in. Now, whether it's because he doesn't give a fuck about his Judaism, or he doesn't understand history, or he just has decided, well, you gotta sleep with the fucking mistress you met, or I don't know what the expression is. Sleep with the one you're with, or I don't know what the fuck. But whatever it is, he is all in with the Nazis in Ukraine. And these same battalions were called Nazis by the New York Times and mainstream media in 2014, 2015. Then they stopped calling them Nazis. Now they're freedom fighters, right? They're the good kind of Nazis. So Putin dropped the call for denazification. The other concession Russia made, according to Bennett, is that it wouldn't seek the disarmament of Ukraine. For the Ukrainian side, Zelensky renounced that he would seek NATO membership, which Bennett said was the reason for Russia's invasion. It was one of the main reasons for Russia's invasion, was that Ukraine was heading towards becoming a member of NATO. Which, of course, having a militaristic union, a Western militaristic union on your border, including former Soviet bloc countries, would be insanity. I mean, the U.S. would never allow that on our border. Do you think the U.S. would allow Mexico to join a military pact with China or Russia? Fucking no. So anyone who's like shocked that Putin was not okay with Ukraine joining NATO, like the US wouldn't allow anything even near that. Discussing how Western leaders felt about his mediation efforts, Bennett said then Prime Minister Boris Johnson, took an aggressive line, while French President Macron and Chancellor Scholz were more pragmatic. And this goes along with what I said earlier, which is that Macron and Scholz were the ones who had to be dragged in kicking and screaming into this proxy war. They were the ones who initially were running around saying, we can create peace. Hold on, we can stop this. Because they get a lot economically from Russia and they didn't want this. But the U.S. basically said, no, this is happening. We're doing this and you're just fucked. That's no. It's fun that you think you can do the other thing that we don't want, but we're gonna create a proxy war and you're gonna get economically fucked. And half your population will be, not have any heating this winter. But have fun with that. Now, if you want to keep doing the little peace deal thing, you go ahead and try that. That's cute. But no. But ultimately, oh, wait, I forgot the last line, which is kind of hilarious. Bennett said, so Israeli Prime Minister Bennett said President Biden adopted both positions, meaning both the hardcore, no, we need to go to war with Russia, and the, Russia's made some concessions. Maybe we should not go with the war with them. Now, there's two reasons that the U.S. might have adopted, quote unquote, both positions. One might have been that they needed to appear. They felt politically it looked good to appear that the U.S. wanted peace because if it just appeared they were cheering for war, then that would look bad. Now, of course, we know that they ran in there to stop peace talks later and with this one as well. So they made sure to stop the peace talks, but they may have wanted to look like they encouraged peace talks. So that could be part of it. The other could be that Biden actually had no fucking clue what was going on, which... I mean, look into Biden's eyes and tell me that's not a possibility, that he was like, we need to create peace. Russia needs to be killed right now. Also, what? Who am I? Who are you? What is this? Do you have anything to eat? Either one's a possibility. But ultimately, and this is the key, ultimately, the Western leaders opposed Bennett's efforts. Quote, I'll say this in the broad sense. I think there was a legitimate decision by the West to keep striking Putin and not negotiate. And this is more and more shocking considering that that this is a Israeli prime minister. This is like the most U.S. hardcore fucking can you get any more of a U.S. ally than Israel? And yet here he is saying the U.S. stopped him from creating peace with Russia. Now, of course, once the proxy war was on and there was no stopping it, Israel's all in. Israel's never going to go against the U.S. line on anything. But anyway, he says, I'll say this in the broad sense. I think there was a legitimate decision by the West to keep striking Putin and not negotiate. When asked if the Western powers blocked the mediation efforts, Bennett said, basically, yes, they blocked it, and I thought they were wrong. Now, Bennett's a piece of shit. Don't judge from this that he's a good guy, but either way, whether he's bullshitting or not, this goes along with exactly what we know of what France and Germany were doing. Whether he's bullshitting about the U.S. trying to support peace, not U.S., sorry, Israel. Whether he's bullshitting about Israel trying to support peace or not, maybe he's bullshitting because he thinks it looks good now. But either way, the part about France and Germany goes along with what we know, which is France and Germany far more economically tied with Russia. They wanted to create peace. It goes along with what we know of the peace deals that were happening in that first month, and the U.S. made sure to stop them. All right, folks, let's move on to the next topic. I want to show you a little bit of NBC Nightly News. And then we're going to get into some updates on Venezuela, some updates on the U.S. kidnapping a diplomat. All that's coming soon. But as I assume everyone here knows, there's been crazy weather conditions in California. a massive blizzard that there was even snow in California. I mean, not in California, in Los Angeles. And it has shocked everyone. And much of the news from the mainstream media has been like, sense of wonder as snow falls in Los Angeles. This is so exciting that our weather systems are breaking down. But there's also coverage on some of the devastation of it. But so I'm going to show a little of this, and I'm not going to show the whole clip because it's several minutes long. But I'm going to tell you something about the rest of the clip and what they never mention. Maybe some of you can guess what it is they never mention through the whole segment on how tragic and horrible the flooding and everything is in California right now. Maybe you can guess.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a rare storm that hasn't been seen in California in decades. As we come on the air, millions are under life-threatening flash flood alerts after an historic system pummeled the state. Just listen to this. A blizzard warning was issued for the first time ever in San Bernardino County, where they saw more than 5 feet of snow. Other parts of the state saw hurricane-force winds and torrential rains. Rescue workers raced against the clock to save stranded drivers. And now that storm system is pushing east. Our Dana Griffin is in Los Angeles with the very latest.
Life-threatening flooding in the Golden State. In Southern California's Ventura County, multiple RVs swept into the river. Watch this dramatic rescue, one of several in the region. A driver stuck in raging floodwater clings to a rescuer. They're both hoisted, swinging in the wind before safely landing on solid ground.
Okay, you get the idea. Throughout this entire segment, they never say anything about climate crisis. They never say anything about the fact that the climate systems are spiraling, and your right-wing media, Fox News, etc., will act like mainstream media is just all about climate crisis and climate change, and they're so silly and all that bullshit or whatever. No, the liberal media, the NBC News, the MSNBC, CNN, all of them, yes, they will have segments on climate change, but they will also do way more coverage, A, on a fucking balloon in the sky, but B, on something like this, powerful storms, one for the ages, all that shit. And they will never say climate crisis. They will never mention it. And that's how you make sure there is not strong activism surrounding these issues. That's how you make sure that people are not really standing up. The government's not doing shit. We subsidize big oil to the tune of like $1 million a minute. Oh no, it's 11 million a minute. We subsidize big oil. That's around the world, by the way. Subsidize big oil $11 million a minute, trillions a year. Big oil would not be nearly as profitable if we weren't heavily subsidizing them. And if we subsidized clean energy anywhere near at that amount, we would have switched completely off of fossil fuels by now. But none of that can be talked about because it's all these companies, despite the fact they will occasionally say climate change, they are still funded heavily by big oil. Millions and millions of dollars coming in to CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and all of them to make sure they keep, soft hands on the fossil fuel stuff. I mean, New York Times will occasionally have an article on climate crisis or climate change. I don't deny that they do, but they don't do it a lot, and they don't make it front page news a lot because guess what? New York Times gets a lot of funding from Chevron. Chevron is on their board. Chevron they use the same lawyer as Chevron. Chevron is a major shareholder in New York Times. And they do ad campaigns. The New York Times help. So when a company comes to New York Times and says, we want to pay you, $10 million to do ads for us, some of the time, New York Times will create the ad with them. We'll say, oh, we'll create an ad for you. And so they work with whatever PR company and they help create the creative side. So New York Times has helped create and come up with ads for Chevron to promote Chevron. And that's how you end up with reports like this, where it's like weather madness and they never say climate crisis. They never say the shit's hitting the fan because we have fucked this planet. Can't say it. Won't do it. And of course, if you want to get to another level, a layer of reality, because these are the types of layer of reality you won't get from mainstream media, but you also won't get from a lot of independent media. Not only is it the fact that mainstream media is still not really talking about the climate crisis. I mean, 2 years ago, Fairness and Accuracy Reporting did a study on, and they found that MSNBC News had 5 reports or something on climate change, and NBC Meet the Press had 2 mentions of climate change. One of them because Bernie Sanders brought it up. That was 2-3 years ago. This is still going on, where they completely ignore that this is a thing. They also look actually where I paused it. It says historic winter storm or one for the ages. Yeah, these stop becoming one for the ages when it's every fucking year. They were talking about forest fires in California, and they were like, every year I would see reports on nightly news going, forest fires of historic. This is one for the history books, these forest fires. And then the next year they'd go, this is one for the history books, historic fires. You can't say it every year. It's not a fucking historic fire if it's happening every year. Instead, it's the new norm, you goddamn assholes. It's the norm. And you won't even talk about why it's the norm. It's just so fucking infuriating. The idiocy from these people. What was I about to say before that? The historic climate change. They fund mainstream media. Oh, layers of reality. That's right. So one of them that you don't often get is simply the fact that they won't say climate crisis, even when they're doing a report like this. But to go to a deeper layer is even independent media often, almost all the time, won't say the word capitalism. Now, I know if you're out there and you're right wing or something, you go, oh, he brings capitalism into the climate, as if capitalism has anything to do with the climate. You had to capitalism make the clouds go dark. Actually, if you stop and think and stop making that ridiculous voice, why are you talking like that? Fucking stop making that voice. That's stupid. It's just a stupid voice. Why would you do that stupid voice? If you stop and think about it for a second, capitalism is the idea that we have infinite growth on a planet with finite, limited resources, right? And that's impossible, but we keep going down that path. And within that system is the endless burning of fossil fuels, the endless cutting down of trees, the endless driving and selling of more cars every day. And so not only is that all attached with capitalism, the idea that everything has a dollar sign on it except for our future. So they'll put dollar signs on the number of trees, dollar signs on the water, dollar signs on the air, dollar signs on the land, but future, not important. Not important whether we have a future. Dollar signs, I'll give one example, and I don't remember the type of fish. I think it was orange something. There was a type of fish that they were fishing for, and they found out that these fish would come together at a certain time of year, all in this certain shoal, and they'd all group together, millions maybe, and so the trawlers and the fishers, they all go out there and they'd get this type of fish that was prevalent. They were so easy to catch. They could just scoop their net in and get thousands. So they were selling them cheap all over the world, selling them cheap. What they didn't realize is that this was the entirety of the population of that fish, and they live for 40 years. Those fish can live for. So when they cleared them all out in like 10 years, maybe 20, now you have a tiny percentage of those fish remaining. And for those 10, 20 years, it was fucking boom times. For those 10, 20 years, they were like, we got more fish than we can handle. We're gonna just sell them for pennies. Anybody want a nice fillet? I'll sell it to you for a fucking dime. Because I could just go out there, I could scoop my hand in and catch them. It's amazing. So that's how capitalism works. There's no thought for the future. There's no thought for the time it will take for the planet to rehabilitate and to resurrect the resources that we are destroying. And this is a perfect example. So we are, creating climate crisis. And by the way, we're killing the environment in a myriad ways. So if you want to be a moron who thinks climate crisis is not happening, then okay, fine. But how about you become an activist in all the other ways that we are destroying the planet, cutting down the rainforest, which won't regenerate for fucking generations. Won't regenerate for generations. There you go. Filling the oceans with plastics, acidifying the oceans, killing all the coral reefs that live thousands of years. I could go down the list. Killing 50% of all wildlife in the past 40 years. But, so why don't you get active on that and shut up about your idiocy on climate change, because you're making yourself look really dumb. But, so the deeper layer is that this is connected to capitalism, very much so. Another aspect that is connected to capitalism and connected to colonialism and imperialism is the fact that the U.S., we're 5% of the population, 4% now of the population, and we use something like 25% of the world's resources every year. 25% of the resources that are used, we use. And we have the filling of the atmosphere with CO2 has largely been done by the United States. And then we point at China and we say, China's doing it too. Well, for one thing, China is 1.4 billion people, way more than we are. So when we say they're almost emitting as much fossil fuels as we are, it's like, dude, we're one fourth of their population. You can't compare those two. Per capita, they're not even near us. But beyond just that, half of the fucking CO2 that's emitted from China is to produce our shit, is to make the garbage. Now, that's slowly stopping because we're cutting off trade with China, but it's to make the garbage that we endlessly buy. So consumerism is tied to that flooding, to that person being dangled off a fucking piece of dental floss from a helicopter in the middle of a storm just to save his life. Doesn't even get to keep his car. It's all connected. See, folks, it's all connected. And yet, people don't want to, both because it's upsetting, but also because your mainstream media's job is to not dig deeper, is to tell you all these things happen and act like that's it. We're not given this information. They don't talk about it. They don't, I mean, the big oil companies we now know, we've seen the documents, to quote Alex Jones, we have the documents showing big oil knew about climate change starting in the late 50s. Then they studied it more, and they knew even more about it in the 60s. Then they knew even more about it in the 70s, where they knew like specifically what was going to happen each year. And then they were reporting to the president and telling him what was happening. And they were still denying it in the 90s. You still had, well, to this day, you have presidential candidates going, climate crisis. Yeah, right. And Santa Claus is real too. So, I mean, it's just amazing that people are like, oh, the liberal media. It's like, yeah, the liberal media is selling you bullshit, like covering these storms, covering these catastrophes, and not saying the word climate crisis, climate change, global warming, none of it. Now, climate crisis, obviously, the term fits far, far more than global warming, because when the globe warms, it causes all kinds of weather chaos. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing never before seen snowstorms in Los Angeles, at least at this level in certain areas. And yeah. All right, I'm going to keep going. Like I said, I have news on the U.S. kidnapping a diplomat. I have news on plenty of other things coming up. And I will be doing that at rumble.com/Lee Camp. So join me over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Amazing people. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me. It's free to be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. I've had to go over there because largest YouTube channel banned globally, over 2,000 videos banned globally, podcasts banned globally by Spotify. However, I have renamed it and recreated it, and I'm waiting to see whether Spotify takes it down. So if you like to hear this, what I'm doing right now, but you are more into podcasts, go over to and you use Spotify. You can look up the Lee Camp Show. On the other platforms, it's called Moment of Clarity, and it should still be there. But so look up either the Lee Camp Show or Moment of Clarity. I also have two other podcasts: Common Censored with Eleanor Goldfield and Government Secrets with Graham Elwood. And I think you should check them out if you haven't already. If you're into podcasts, give them a listen. But okay, rumble.com/Lee Camp. Oh, and something I have to say is my schedule. I'm going to be off for close to a week, starting after tomorrow. So tomorrow I have an interview live stream at around noon Eastern at youtube.com/Behind the Headlines. But starting Wednesday, I will be off for a week close to a week, because I have to move. I might have a Monday live stream, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all those live streams will not be happening because I will be moving throughout all of that. And yeah, so I will miss you. But there will also be a new Most Censored News. So there'll be a new episode of that at youtube.com/Behind the Headlines as well during that time period that I'll be off. All right, let's go over to Rumble. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp. I'm just going to keep saying it while I fix the streams, which is also what a doctor says when he's dealing with STD.